for the Charter Review Advisory Committee. And then I'll do roll call. And then what I'll do is if I can get a motion after that for the election of a vice chair. So that way we can have a vice chair run the meeting. Okay. So we'll do roll call. Let me get this here. Okay. So committee member Duiziak.
Here.
Committee member Gaddis is absent. Committee member Maruko.
Here.
Committee member Naraya.
Here.
Committee member, alternate committee member Whittam.
Here.
Committee member Prinzler.
Here.
Alternate member Taveras.
Here.
Okay, so if I can get a motion to move the election of officer for vice chair, and we'll do that, and then we'll do the flag.
So moved. Okay. Second.
Thank you. So then I guess can I have any nominations for vice chair?
I would move committee member Narian for the position of vice chair.
Second.
Okay.
Well, first of all, you got a look on your face.
I wouldn't know from this person have the experience to do it possibly. That's why I wasn't sure.
I say go for it.
It's really easy to pick up. All you're doing is presiding over the group of people here. So I think you're more than qualified, having seen us do it, sir.
And there's no time like the present to step up.
Okay.
Go for it.
I think it's unanimous.
Do you accept?
Do you accept?
I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, so then all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any objection? Okay.
So welcome to herding
Unanimously.
cats.
Yes.
Okay, so you will be vice chair, so you will run the meeting tonight.
Great.
So you can go ahead and start with the salute to the flag.
Everyone please rise. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So what's next?
Take it slow and read. Take it slow and read.
Salute to the
So
Flags,
approve the order agenda, item D.
So moved.
Second.
We did that
Oh,
by changing the order of the agenda.
Oh, okay.
oh,
There you go.
all right. Blue folder items, additional backup materials.
We have none.
Okay, now, item F, consent calendar.
Just read.
Oh, okay. Business items except those formally noticed. Business items except those formally noticed for public hearing or discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and act upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on a consent calendar will be approved in one motion following oral communications.
I would like to have I actually have some questions on the minutes, so I would like to move that into the excluded consent calendar.
So, now what?
Both of them or
Just, just general questions. If you want to answer them now, we can probably take care of it as a consent calendar item, but I thought that we have discussion as excluded.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you say excluded or?
Right. So we'll exclude
Exclude item F2.
So then I need a motion for
motion to
F1.
approve the affidavit?
Second.
Senator, call a vote? Okay. Did I just call each member or, sorry.
You can just ask
Oh.
who wants to vote for yes, and then.
Who wants to vote for it?
Everybody in favor?
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
So moved? Right.
Anybody against?
Any opposed?
Any opposed?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, any public comment?
Oh, yes. No public comment. I have no e-comments or Zoom. Thank you.
F2.
F2,
Item G.
sorry.
That's great.
Item J, right?
No, we're on F2.
F2. Okay, approve the following charter review.
No.
No, that's right. You see,
Okay,
No,
so
that's,
I know this is your first time doing this. I don't want to overstep myself, but
Feel free.
one of your main objectives is to try to keep the order of us cats up here. So I won't talk until you say you recognize me to talk.
Okay.
That's the same, that way we don't all talk
Committeemember
about.
Morocco?
Okay, so the question I had, Madam Clerk, is when we had our historical commission meeting, we had a discussion about whether these are actually minutes that are being presented or just detailed notes, and the interaction that goes on between the staff people and presenting what's presented, or is just the transcript and this thrown together. And with our commission, it was, there's no review by the staff and it just goes into the paper. So I was just wondering if that's what's being done here, because that kind of changes the dynamic of the level of review.
The minutes should be summary minutes, shouldn't be transcript. We don't have the capability of doing transcripts. It's too expensive and costly. So we do summary. We don't do action minutes, but we do summary. So we try to get as much as we can into the minutes.
So is it?
So, but what happens is when we get council minutes, we review it. When we get charter review minutes, we review it. Our department review, either I or my chief deputy reviews it.
Okay.
And then if there's any issues, like if you bring in any issues, then we go back and review it before we correct it, because we want to make sure we're on the same page.
So there is staff interaction
Right.
on the minutes themselves before they actually get presented to us.
Well, for council and charter. So now if you're saying that some of the other commissions or the historical commission, the staff is not, because they should be reviewing it also, their director, because they sign off on those minutes.
Right.
So they should review it and then provide it to you. And then if you have questions, but
Yeah,
we
because it
do
came off because
summary.
of the misspelling of one of the people we were honoring with an adjournment, and it's
Oh.
like,
Yeah, they should catch that. So since you brought it to my attention, I will make sure that is communicated to the liaisons
yeah, we ended up,
and the directors.
denying the minutes because they were just detailed notes and they weren't actually a summary of the action.
Oh, I
So-
see. Okay.
Member Pindler?
But the issue is, this has always been an issue, that as long as there's backup, particularly backup nowadays with both online and accessible video,
The video.
the need to have just an action minutes is basically what these things are all about. If the staff isn't doing the proper work, then it's really the city manager who should know.
Well, for the minutes, we're in charge of the minutes.
No, but for the other.
No, for the other commissions.
Commissions as well.
Right. We're the
Then
ones that hire the minute secretary. We're the ones that work with the liaisons. So if there's any issues, they should also come to us, or you can email me, and then we can have that discussion.
Yeah, she does a really great job with the detail on it, so I'm really happy. And I can understand why we need it for this group, because everyone
Right.
would look at it 20 years from
Right.
now and say, is that what they were talking about? But I just wanted to be clear that some staff eyes have actually reviewed it, and you're telling me yes,
Yes.
then I don't have an issue with it. So I would actually move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Public comment? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what you would
Okay.
ask, yes. Yes, I have, let me double check here. None on Zoom and no e-comments. So we're good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
Then what do I say next? What?
I would actually recommend, if we do vote on something, that you say that this is the outcome of
The
the,
outcome of the
They're unanimous.
unanimous vote for the consent calendar approval?
this is the excluded consent calendar, so
Excluded consent calendar
items, yeah.
Unanimous vote for excluded consent calendar items.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Now with item H. Okay, item H, public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Item,
We have none.
any public comments from the Zoom or?
Unless this gentleman wants to speak.
So no,
Okay.
yeah, no e-comments or no Zoom.
Then move on, move on to item 8, item I. Items continued from previous agendas. Discussion and possible action regarding Article 11, Section 11.2, City Attorney.
Yeah, that was my item, and if you saw on the agenda, documents 12 and 13, you had asked that I take what we had discussed in the past and put it into a form that included track changes, and I also included a cleaned up copy. So how it would look without any of the track changes in it. As I understand it, there has been a consultant hired to, Michael Colantuono, to hire to put it into, so I guess this is where we leave it to them, if everybody's okay with the way that the track changes worked.
So
Committee Member Morocco?
I don't know where Mr. Webb went, but I was at that meeting, and so I think your summation is correct that they did approve hiring the person. I didn't know if he was supposed to appear by Zoom today or that for next month, and that was the piece that Mr. Webb would be able to fill in. But he was approved on the list of approved council.
And the purpose of the track changes was to take what we had discussed over the past couple of meetings and put it into a form that the consultant can look at to organize it for presentation to the city council as an option. And I think this is what we had discussed. By taking, there are actually two parts. Section 10, which has a list of the elected officials. So my assumption is that if the thing that the council is going to look at is to remove the city attorney as an elected official, that has to be deleted. So that's why that first part of it is there. The second part takes out any references to election out of section 11.2, which is the city attorney. It doesn't specifically change any of the activities that they do, but all it does is take out any reference to the election process. So this is a package of not electing, or moving from elected to appointed city attorney. So it is to be presented to the city council as, do you want to put this on the ballot?
I did want to clarify again, I think the other piece that they voted on, which I thought was very unusual, is they wanted this to be for the 2028 position, so it wasn't going to impact 2025. And I actually spoke up on it because it's like, I don't want to serve on this committee for 5 years. Yeah. So I think the ultimate result was, I proposed to them that we do our work, finish it off, send it off to the council, let them figure out how they want to present it. But they were talking specifically that it wouldn't go into effect until the 2028 term. And I think that was a response to an email, a letter to the editor about this process.
Well, Mr. Webb, I see you shaking your head.
Well, it's going to be on the it'll be on the November 2026 election, and it'll go into effect on the April 2029 term. So I was shaking my head only at the 2028, and I don't think it was in regards to the email letter to the editor, and particularly I think it was more of the concern of timing, in that you have to put it on the November general election because of a change in state law that says it has to be on the November election, and there are a series of exceptions, and one of them is that it doesn't affect changes status of any employee. And so in 2016, the clerk, the treasurer wanted to change the job from full-time to part-time. And the county clerk informed that, the county registrar informed the clerk that that couldn't be on our March election. It had to go on the November election because the treasurer who's proposing it would put it on the March election. So, and if it doesn't, it's run by the county. So there's no way of knowing, and it's a presidential election, there's no way of knowing if the clerk will even have the results before the end of the election period. And there was concern from the majority of the council that, well, who's going to run? And because, as you know, you start building a campaign long before the nomination period. Who's going to do that if it's may not even exist? And then what do you happen if you close the nominations and then it passes? And the other, I'll be blunt. I think in part because of the people and groups who have reached out to me, I find it very unlikely that this will pass. I think it will suffer the same result it has in every time it's been put on the ballot. You had talked about, on another issue, I think it was the clerk's issue, it'd be difficult to propose something and have success if the incumbent was opposing it. I won't be the incumbent because I'm not running again, but I will, as a resident, fully oppose it. The clerk informed me, because we had to have someone else do the impartial analysis, that she's going to oppose it and will seek to assist with the argument against. Chief Kaufman, who has worked both for a city with an appointed city attorney and dual function office. He opposes it. A number that groups that I'm not authorized to disclose. So I find it very unlikely it will pass, and it will have the impact of doing one of the things that committee member Pinsler mentioned. He wanted to get more people eligible to be city attorney, and it would have the unintended consequence of having fewer people run if, as I firmly believe, it won't be passed by the voters. So I think it was more a timing issue. And so you have two factors. The indication, to the extent that it makes a difference how you phrase the charter amendment, is that it will be on the ballot in November 2026. But they did approve a contract with Colantunu now. We don't have it executed because they amended it after he signed it to make clear that he was personally doing the work and not any of the other people in his firm. He had told that was the case to Mr. Wazansky, but so we'll amend that. And they reiterated that you're to look at, that you're free to look at all options. There was a specific referral that started that all off by new Councilmember Barrett, seconded by Obaji, to have you look at the Long Beach model, which I think initially only committee member Tabares had brought up splitting the criminal and civil. The Long Beach model, I don't know if it's better or worse. I can think of reasons that it may be more expensive. I could also see that there might be ways to change the budget where it be actually save money if we brought more of the litigation in-house, which the council direction is they eliminated the city attorney's paralegal back in 2028, I think. And so, I don't believe there was any in-house litigation prior. I think that we changed that with pitches motions because that was already always outsourced. And we're looking towards getting the cases that we get a lot of, the slip and falls, things like that, that could be done more efficiently. But then I'd be paying an in-house attorney to do discovery, which wasn't, not necessarily the best use. If you want to, and I did object, as I've mentioned while they were both here, to the report in that it mentioned, or they mentioned the split model, but the committee hadn't really had a discussion of that. The committee can choose just to pass the package, send it on to the council, I'll send it to Colantuno. He'll have access to the charter. I don't know if you're just sending a package, I don't know how much, I don't know what his job is. I always envisioned, like every other charter amendment, you were sending proposed language that, the council could choose to do. And if that proposed language was your, hey, this is most of the time, then that absolutely could form the basis of a charter amendment. We'll ask him to review separate sections of the charter to make certain anything that would be inconsistent with an appointed city attorney would be done, so you could do that all at once. On the other hand, if you want to explore the Long Beach model where they're both elected, but you separate the jobs, it won't satisfy we're like every other city, but as I mentioned a zillion times.
Even less like every other city.
What?
It'll be even less like every other city.
Yeah, but it will, I think. So when the 5 times I ran, I was opposed 3, unopposed twice. And, these things tend to go in cycles. District 5, Councilman Barrett was unopposed. We've had elections where both.
It was empty the first time around.
And, but she had a write-in candidate, I think.
Well, sort of.
Yeah, so not technically unopposed. But we'd had one where both Kilroy and I think Ost were unopposed. We had an election where the mayor, Mayor June, was unopposed. And so I don't know that it's any more or less, but I would think you would get many more attorneys running for the 2 jobs if they were split than the 1, because Redondo has no shortage of attorneys living in here. But there is a shortage of people who have experience in both prosecution and municipal civil law, and they're 2 very different jobs. So if unlike me, you didn't come from another dual function city before I came here, where you're doing, I was the counsel for the Hawthorne Municipal Airport at one point in time, plus doing prosecution, then there are limited people who can do both jobs. I haven't had any opponents who were qualified for both parts. They were either a prosecutor and qualified only for the criminal, or only civil attorneys and qualified for the only. I only mention this in depth, and it's entirely up to you. I don't know that I favor it, but it's not something that I would oppose, because the ultimate choice still remains with the voters for each position. It's the voters choosing civil and the voters choosing criminal. And I do think it'd be easier for both positions, because you could have prosecutors, other DAs challenge for the city prosecutor position, and you could have people who have experience in civil law or, focused on municipal law that could do that. But it's entirely up to you. If you want to do that, I would certainly request the Long Beach City Prosecutor to come speak, and then I would also check with the Long Beach City Attorney if they can come speak. There are some negatives I could think. There was once when the former Long Beach city prosecutor challenged the former Long Beach city attorney, and you can imagine there's some turmoil
That was nasty.
for, there. But, so anyways, if the goal is just to be like everyone else, then you have to wonder why we're keeping prosecution, because everyone else, it's basically the same number, dual function versus the number of elected city attorneys. If the job is to expand the number of people who are running for the two offices, I certainly think you would have more qualified candidates for one of the jobs versus the combined job.
If I could-
Josiah?
First of all, I'm into uniqueness. I'm not into being everybody, so, because you bring this up several times.
Well, the time that,
I know.
that's the primary
I
thing.
watched
yeah.
the other meeting, I wasn't here. I watched that, okay.
How many times out of 400 and
blame.
something, yeah,
I got it. I understand.
okay.
It's been a pain in my ass. Anyway, could you explain why we have to be on the November 26th ballot?
Well, the council,
I know the state passed the law, but then we fought them and we won.
different law.
Okay, well,
So
then
the law,
explain it to me.
the law that so only the charter amendment, and that's a statewide concern. We didn't challenge them on that. So the only thing that has to be is a charter amendment that doesn't fit with, and I forget what the other one is.
So only a charter amendment
And-
has to be in the uniformed elections.
Only certain charter amendments have to be.
It gets even finer then.
It does. And so like your 5 amendments that you passed could all be on the March election. None of them change. But anything that, for example, of what you're considering now, if you're to change the job status of the clerk from elected to appointed, or you're to change her from full-time to part-time, that would have to be on the November ballot. And I think it was Bell, because they had like a charter amendment on, I'm not certain of the date, but it was some like off date, like the Friday after
It was
Thanksgiving.
well, and it was in June.
Yeah, or it was some day, and so that's why they passed that. What we fought was SB 415. And SB 415, we argued 3 things. One, it didn't apply to charter cities. To know how to write something that applies to charter city, it didn't say charter city anywhere. In fact, the League of California Cities didn't oppose it because they didn't think it applied to charter cities. Thereafter, the former Attorney General issued an advisory opinion that it applies to charter cities. And so charter cities started, changing to comply with the law. The second part was that it couldn't because of a municipal affair. It's specifically mentioned in the Constitution that the voters get to choose, how our elections are carried out. And the third part, it wasn't narrowly tailored because they set a test that was so high. So you could either have it in November or in the primary, but the test was so hard that the statewide primary didn't satisfy their own test. And so
That was their defect, though. That wasn't our defect.
well, yeah, but then the law is not constitutional. At the trial court level, I argued, and the court said he did think it applied to charter cities, but that it couldn't. That it was a municipal affair. The state appealed it. I had an outside appellate specialist argue it before the Court of Appeals. They took the more diplomatic of it doesn't apply to charter cities. So the state could redo another SB 415, but in the meantime, most of the charter cities extended their terms. It's not hard to convince a politician to vote to extend their term when they have to. And they were extended to November. But now what we're finding is now that the county has no competition, the costs have soared for having a November election. And so we've saved like hundreds of thousands of dollars on every election by able to be able to keep it. There are arguments for and against. There are fewer people vote in March elections. But on the other hand, they can pay attention to the city races, whereas on the November election, you have a lot of you have a lot of
fatigue.
more votes, but you have ballot fatigue. And and I remembered you always had talked about that. It's one thing we agree on. And so we got an expert to sign a declaration talking about the ballot fatigue. And so, we won that. But it's a different issue than
Well, I guess what I'm having a hard time, any changes that we make are not going to affect anybody that's in office now or is elected. Because if you make the change in 2026, it doesn't take effect to the following election.
Well, they said that, yes, they said they do not want it taking effect till 2029. If you're going to do any change of the clerk or treasurer, it would make sense to do it, and there was a discussion to do it in the November election if it changes the status. If it doesn't change the status, then you can do it in the March election, which is much more,
I really
much
don't
less
want
costly.
to prolong this, but
Okay.
I'm having a hard time separating out a municipal concern and a statewide concern, and how we've kind of fallen into the statewide concern
Joe,
for part.
maybe I can help.
Please.
If it's November 2024, by the time you certify the ballot, it's almost butting up against the
Nomination.
period.
I'm not talking about the year. I'm talking about the
Why November versus?
Why November and not March? I mean, it's a municipal concern issue. I mean, whether to have the city, as you have
I agree.
pointed out.
I agree.
So all these people have different, I'll say, city attorneys and city clerks appointed or whatever. You've had,
Well, let's just say they weren't as stupid with this law as they were with the other one.
yes, that is.
well, I never worry about somebody else's ox being gored. I only worry about mine, okay? Just so it's clear.
And no one has challenged it, and the council hasn't given direction to challenge that. And the council probably, speaking bluntly, wouldn't have challenged that if they could agree on what to do with the, to shorten or lengthen the terms. And so you had.
I do remember that.
Yes,
That was part of it.
and so we were stuck in an endless cycle, and we were running against where they could take certain enforcement action. And so I expressed an opinion that was correct, and it turned out to, which is what I believed, and turned out to be correct. We couldn't get any other cities to join us. That was a violation of home rule.
Okay.
And on that bill, we won. No one's challenged the other bill, and it's been some time since it's
Okay,
been in place.
I'm just trying to understand
So another
what we
issue
can and what we
too,
can't do.
with those cities who are now with the county. So in a presidential election, if they're in March, they're okay. But then when it's the governor's race, it goes to June.
Yeah, right.
So now you've got different council members in different, more longer terms.
No,
So
I got that part, but that
That's
doesn't affect
crazy.
us. I mean, that
Doesn't affect us.
That doesn't affect us at all. I mean, so I'm not trying to understand why we're tied to a date that basically is a municipal concern, and somebody shuffled it over to a
Yes.
statewide concern. That's what I'm trying
Yes.
to get through my thick skull.
Committee Member Pinsler?
Yeah, a couple things. To get back to the issue of the Long Beach. The purpose of this was to resolve this particular concept. So the curve of city attorney and city prosecutor both being elected, we can discuss. And I don't think have they formally.
They wanted you to look at every option.
Okay.
And you've got more time. So if you just want to send this up and go, we're not interested. The important thing is to have it appointed like most cities do, then you can be done in 2 months. And
No, I think it's probably worth looking into. I do think, though, that we're not, Long Beach is 7 times bigger than we are. So there are more possibilities of candidates. I do think that this may be an issue, again, of how many people are going to want to run for this job. And a lot of it will depend on what the salary is going to be and so it could very well be that you create it and nobody or one person runs again. I think that we should agendize that particular thing, but I think we should just close on this, set it, if we want to set it aside and put it into a package that we ultimately send up, I think that's fine. Let's just get this off the plate and deal with just this particular issue. And to go back to what I wrote in here, you may notice that there are, I've taken out the he's and the gender focus, so all of that's in there as well. But to a great extent, the verbiage is very similar, if you recall in the document that I gave you the last time, that a lot of cities use the same verbiage for what the city attorney
You
does.
go with wanting to be like everybody else.
Yeah. It's what the city attorney, it's what most cities do. And in fact, it was in our charter as well, mostly what the city attorney does. So you'll see a few changes, but they all have to do with the election process as opposed to the work that the city attorney does. And if we want to set this aside until we put a full package together, I just want to get this off the plate and say this is
Meaning the
this is done.
city attorney issue.
This particular
This
version
fits.
of it is done.
Committee Member Morocco?
I agree with Committee Member Pinsler. I was the only one voting against having this as an appointed position, but it's up to the council. Our job is just to recommend stuff to the council. They can figure out when it goes into effect. We're doing our job by at least analyzing and make a recommendation. So if we don't want to be tied to a specific date of when it goes into effect, the council can figure it out. We can put it in our report saying, okay, we didn't consider this, but this is some of the options ultimately. With that, we've done our job with regard to that. The Long Beach model, I didn't see it in the materials we have.
It's not.
I know it's not, I don't know why we haven't been presented with it, since it's still part of the same agendized item on it. But I would like to be able to at least see a copy of that. And going back to that Long Beach model and the city prosecutor, so if we make up a new position called city prosecutor out of this whole thing, do we have to go through this whole process with the DAs basically saying that, no, you can't do this because, no, okay, that's
Talking
good.
to a former city prosecutor.
But you wouldn't if you did it at the same time.
Okay,
If you did it at the same time, then you wouldn't need to get permission from the DA.
okay. And so when do you think we can see the Long Beach model? This is Long Beach elected here. Is it, you just recommending us to
So
go
it
to their
was
charter?
on, it was on my, I don't think we gave the actual language, but it was on one of the first things I gave you in terms of, so again, everybody's one way, but that ignores the fact that we're a dual function office. And so I gave you a chart that dual function offices are kind of split, where it's like 50-50 where the city attorney is appointed, 50-50 where the city attorney is elected, and one where the city attorney is essentially can only be removed for cause, which is Torrance, where they have civil service protection once they're solicited, once they're appointed. And the one other exception is Long Beach, where they have a elected city attorney and a separately elected city prosecutor. And those jobs are different. I can bring back, if the committee wants to discuss it and look at it, then I can look at it. Or you can just say to the council, we considered it and we think the important thing is to have it appointed.
Member Taveras? Taveras.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you not done?
The only question I had is, the person that was from Grass Valley, did we as a group want to talk to him before we present all the package to him so we can find out exactly what we're interested in? And I guess he's appearing by Zoom on everything.
Yeah, well, it would be the language, and I see the language that Committee Member Pinsler has. It's different significantly from what you had last time in terms of this is more just this is our charter duties currently, and it's taking the election out. It is very different from the language that you had that was what everybody else was doing. So that isn't even that.
It's relatively close.
Well, no, it's significantly different in material. Well, like you may not recognize it, you may truly believe, but it is significantly different. So I just want to make certain we're all talking about the same thing. This is in essence just leaving what we have in place and removing that the city attorney is appointed. So it doesn't matter what those other cities did or the review. It's just, taking elected out of our charter. I'm not going to comment pro or con because I don't want to give an indication which is worse, but
Are we going to be scheduled, do we want him to come to talk to us before we send everything up, or do we just want to send it up and then interview?
well, I think the language is most important because that's what he's going to work through. Well, if you vote, if you agree to, then that's why I'm just being clear is this what we're, I hadn't looked at it, so I was assuming it was the language that you proposed last time. This is markedly different.
From the discussion that we had, it seemed that the issue was elected or not elected. And from my non-lawyer perspective, I looked at what the standard tended to be in other cities and looked at it and compared. It was pretty close. At least it seemed to me.
Okay, so anyway, no, you can send anything you want, and I just want to make certain that to the extent I'm involved, what am I sending up? And so it doesn't have a date, but it starts with enumeration in term section 10.
Right.
Okay, so if that's what you're wanting as opposed to what you discussed last time, that's fine. I'll send that to Mr. Colantuno and have him, once he signs the contract, have him review this and review our charter for other language that may need to be changed in terms of the duties of the city attorney. And then
Mike, just to be clear, what I presented the last time was a compendium of all of the various cities. And the section that I highlighted was generally used.
right,
It wasn't a recommended.
understood. So I'm not.
And I looked at it and I compared to what we had in our charter and I said, well, as long as you could degenderize it and make it so that it takes out the elected, it seemed to fit.
I'm not quarreling with that at all. I just want to make.
On the last election.
Yes, I just wanted to make certain that what I was sending was what you were, voting to send to him. And then he'll review that. There are other sections that should be changed as well. For example, removal of the elected officials other than, city council. So that would be one, clear example. And then he'll return that and say, okay, there are no unintended consequences with the language, and that you have a full packet of charter amended that you would want to propose for this.
Councilman, come in.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to go back to understanding the dual function and what I consider the unicorn problem, with you being a unicorn that has that experience with both, right? So assuming that, it remains, just one job, city attorney elected, and I don't know how it's worked in the past, but would it be a situation where, let's say it's somebody that has more of a civil background or somebody that has more of the prosecutorial background, the criminal, does it just become a situation where they just hire a deputy that has the opposing expertise? depending on what that person brings, a skill set?
Yeah, not to do it well. So I had experience in both. My predecessor was more civil, but he was a reserve deputy, with the sheriffs and with Hermosa Beach. And so he had criminal background from that perspective, because you have to manage both and you have to be involved in both.
Who tends to run against, who tends to be your, people who run against you? They have dual backgrounds also, or
It's one or the other. And that's the reason that, why if you recommend the Long Beach model, I could see that passing, because it preserves voter choices and you'll get more people running for it. So my first election, I had a school board member or former school board member, a former council person, and a local attorney, all of whom had civil experience and no prosecution. And second election was one of the repeat from the first. We had a civil attorney, and in my last election, I was opposed by a deputy DA. And it gave me a market advantage in that they weren't prepared by background to do both. And they would have to learn as things were going on, whereas I had significant background in each. And so that's the thing that would be, I could see it passing, and I don't know if it's better or worse. I only know this model. But I could see that it wouldn't need unicorns, because you're going to find a far larger pool of, civil/municipal attorneys with no criminal prosecution background, and a separately large pool of residents in Redondo who have prosecution with the DA or the LA City Attorney's Office, who could run for prosecution. So you'd get a wider pool without removing the choice from the voters. So you wouldn't need, to use an example, the unicorn, because otherwise you have to have come up through, if I was originally a deputy DA, but I wouldn't have been at all qualified to take over as city attorney if I hadn't come up through two different, including this one, dual function offices.
Committee Member Dozyak?
Yes. When you bring us, or are you going to bring us back something about the Long Beach?
That's up to you. So
I would make a motion that you do, but that comes later. But I would like to know when they went to a dual function office. In other words,
I don't know.
well, I know, but I mean,
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
but I'm just kind of throwing it out. I can do my own research.
I'll
But
do
my
it.
point
And
is, I would like to know when they made that switch.
It's been that way a long time.
Well, okay, they're an old city. I think they're second oldest in the county, but, and, that's that. I have one other thing, I had a brain fart, so.
Committee Member Pinsler?
Yeah, and also as part of that, and as neutrally as possible, having been through your position as a city prosecutor with an elected city attorney, the understanding of what happens when you disagree. Now, you and Jerry may have disagreed a lot, I don't know. But when you have two electeds, like what happened in Long Beach can happen. And what does that do to the functioning of the legal department of a city when that happens? And, it's not, when the elected part of it creates what you quote unquote mandates. And if there are two people in the same office with mandates that don't agree on the mandates, that can be problematic. And I'm not asking you to for the resolution of it. I think that when we discuss this, that's an important issue to bring up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll ask Doug Halbert, who's the Long Beach City Prosecutor, maybe to talk about it first. He wasn't part of that. I don't, as I said, I don't know that I favor it. We'll have to learn more about it, but I think that is change that can accomplish some of your goals that would have a chance of success. And even if I come to the conclusion, no, I don't like that model, I'd still write an impartial analysis. I still wouldn't lead a campaign one or the other because it's still leaving it up to the voters. It's still leaving check and balances. Offhand, I would think, so when I worked for Jerry, he was my boss, and so it was real easy to settle any resolution because unless I found it to be unethical, which I never did, it was, I would make suggestions, but that would be it. I don't think there'll be much interaction. I think there are a few areas I'm curious about, but the jobs are really distinct. And if you separate the jobs, like I've said to the council, when I was frustrated about something, they were talking about prosecution, and they really don't know much about prosecution. And I said, you probably couldn't pick out two of my three mainline prosecutors in a lineup. And I think that's true, because when you're a council person, how much of your day-to-day is dealing with them, because they represent the people of the state of California, and that's the other distinction. Where I worry about is for fair political practice violations, the DA handles it unless it's a charter city with an elected city attorney. So you can't give that to the city prosecutor. So does the city attorney hold on to that piece of prosecution? And I could see some sort of conflict where it's clearly within, the city attorney, but I could see the city prosecutor saying, oh, well, I would have filed it on council person so-and-so. So there are areas that I'm curious to find out, how often do they have conflict, but it may not be, yeah.
There aren't a large number of places to talk to about this because it doesn't happen very often.
Well, again, you say that, but then if you want to make us like everybody else, I know I'm just responding, you get rid of prosecution, but that would be disastrous for the city. And so you have to accept we're not like everybody else. And if you wanted to sort of get more people running, and they're very unique jobs. And so, there'd be a lot more people who are eligible to do the city attorney job, but not prosecution, and vice versa, than you have for both. And by the way, if it stays elected, one of the things, and you haven't talked about it, but one of the things it may make sense to do, and I'm only remembering this, review the qualifications. It's 5 years because that used to be the length of time you needed to be a municipal judge, and it's 10 years now. So if you do that, now that will shrink the pool somewhat, but you may want to have someone who's been an attorney for 10 years before they're either, you have the city attorney, what the council sees, which is carrying out their policy direction. There's much more work in advising the 400 plus employees in their day-to-day duties. And then you have the city attorney, who's the chief law enforcement official for the city. And so I could see separating those two. On the other hand, will it cost more if you have two elected officials? Will it cost more because you can't, there may be some duplication of personnel.
Can you share staff?
Yeah, you can't share staff. On the other hand, our police clerks do the filing, do the clerical work for the city prosecutors, have ever since I got here, and nowhere else does that occur other than Hawthorne, and they have an appointed city attorney, but they do dual function. But it's using the police records who do the clerical work for the prosecutor. So there may be a way for some cost savings. But I'm just speculating because I don't know the model. But the important thing to me and why I would remain neutral is they're both accountable and elected and chosen by the people. And so they're not going to be chosen. You look at Hawthorne, how many city attorneys have they had since I've worked here? Because they're constantly on a 3-2 one way and a 3-2 other way. And they change the city manager and they change the city attorney. And that's gone on for years. And so you can imagine, the pressure that the city attorney is in to give objective, independent advice. Doesn't mean the city attorney is always right, but it's truly what he or she thinks is, the advice.
What you're saying is they don't put their finger in the air?
I don't put my finger in the air.
I didn't say you, I said.
No, but just elected officials don't have to.
Hey, Dozak?
When you bring this back, two or three, you already touched on, like a dual staff, how much, what does their flow chart look like with that? In other words, do they share staff or not? And the issue of salary, that's going to be a big one.
Yep.
Just so everybody understands, especially in this city. And shame on those council people who don't know who the prosecutors are.
I would never have said that to you. You knew who I was long before I ever made it over to City Hall. But and if it's okay with the council, I will kind of tailor it to possibilities for how it could work here. So for, salary, I'll just try and find out if they're equal or if one makes more than.
Well, I was more interested in, are we going to have to make a recommendation about that? And how is that part going to work? We're going to say, let's just assume, and I'm with you, I don't really think any of this is going to pass. A dual function may pass, but I'm even skeptical of that. But the issue of the pyramid of money, in other words, how is that, you can't have, I guess you could have equal salary, just say, but how are we going to address that when we suggest a charter change?
Yeah.
In other words, are we going to say it to be set by, I'll just say, prevailing wage or some bullshit statement like that?
So the city elsewhere in the city council sets the salary for all the elected officials. They can't change that. I think it's their purview. You may want to have in your report whether you think it should be the same or not the same. Salary, there's been so much misinformation out there. The legal expenses are driven by things outside the city attorney's office. They're driven by accidents by staff. They're driven by decisions by the council. But the fact remains, my position, I think, fully loaded with all benefits and PERS from financial services is like $200 an hour. That's not what I get paid, but that's everything. Well, firms are going to get paid a lot more than that, even if they're inside council. They get paid more than that in Manhattan Beach. You'll save money only if staff or council acts not having an attorney to look at, but so I could look at, you could save money if you, perhaps part of the extra staff could be a paralegal.
I'm not trying to save money here or do any budgeting. I'm trying to say, when we present this, are we going to present something that says you're going to hire 2 attorneys, assuming that the dual model passes, okay? We're going to, civil, criminal, they're equals, okay? Does that mean equal in salary? Does that mean, And the other thing is too, prosecutions, we're going to have 10-year, I'll say minimum of experience and, 10 years on the civil side. How is that going to work
So
in the truest sense?
yeah, the only thing you
I mean,
need.
these are all issues that will come up either from the opposition. Or
Right.
from the, and.
So I don't know that you need to address that, other than you may say something like, whatever salaries you set, they should be the same, or, Long Beach, if it's higher for the civil than for criminal, or vice versa, you could.
That's not really in the charter, right? The salary's in the charter. Right?
It's not,
No,
it's
I
not.
understand that.
That's to the council, but you could give a report that goes along with it. I think the only thing you need to turn, if you wanted to make it 10 years, then you would need to amend. So you would be basically separating out the city prosecutor position and creating, so if you look at the proposal, you'd have A, B, C, and D, which is one would be city attorney, the other would be city prosecutor. And then you'd have two different 11.2 and 11 point, whatever is next in order, and you'd segregate their responsibilities. Whatever the council wants to pay them, it's going to depend a lot on, what other cities get paid. You guys treated Jerry horribly. When I came into office, he was the lowest paid of all the comps. I'm being a little facetious. I'm trying to be funny. You don't.
You and I were both on the council.
You're being very facetious.
Okay. But it was by far the lowest paid of all the South Bay cities, and we weren't that way in any other position, and so they're going to decide what to get paid, and it'll be affected by things like. What's a Transparent California? Well, they include our pension liability because we're more transparent about it. And so they dump that all into the salary. So as soon as we passed that bond that saved, as Eugene likes to say, $1 million, then that changed our, reported unfunded liability. And I think now it will go down. All those will make a difference, but that's not for you to decide. You may want to have a report that says whatever, if Long Beach says they're the same, like we think they should be the same, or we think, one set of jobs is more than the other, because to committee member Pinsler's, there aren't a lot of, there's one to look at that has that distinction. And I frankly don't know, what the mix is. But the only thing you have to do is the charter amendment, the language. What are the duties, and what are the things that go along with that?
Details be damned.
These are the important details that will preserve. The details that last only for 4 years, that's ultimately up to the council. And I can help with this language, the mix model, in a way that you have to pay Colantuno to do for the appointed one, because I'm staying neutral if you propose a split model, whereas I'm, as you know, wholeheartedly opposed to removing the choice from the voters.
The part of the city council meeting that went on to that, it was my understanding he's just going to do wordsmithing. I mean, that's what I took.
Wordsmithing, yeah.
That's what I took away from
Yeah, wordsmithing, and then research the charter.
Yes.
Because if I were doing it, the first thing I'd say, well, you need to take it out of the language of removing the city attorney. So I want him to do that, so we don't have the next city attorney, whoever he or she may be, doesn't inherit something where there's no right answer. Like we want to remove him. Oh, well, according to the charter, he or she can only be removed if they've missed X number of meetings. You could inadvertently create a situation even more impervious to change than Torrance is, where they can only be removed for missing, being out of the state for a month.
All right. With a further topic? I mean, are we going
No,
to push this?
I was just trying to explain what it was that I wrote. And,
It's right there in front of us, I can see.
yeah,
I got this
and if we want to set it aside and put it into a package, that's fine. I just wanted to get it off my plate.
Do you want me to send it to Colantuno now? Because I won't need to send Colantuno the Long Beach one, as I mentioned, so I can send it to him now, and,
I would recommend that, and just looking through the Long Beach Charter, you know, the specific duties are obviously very different from each other,
Yeah.
and we need to know, in order to give the council at least our recommendation, what the dynamic of it is.
And like, the only time I know there was a conflict was when Tom Rees was the city prosecutor, and he decided to run for city attorney. But as far as I know now, there aren't conflicts, but, you know, I'd ask them both to come in and see if they'd speak to it, because, you know, it certainly would be fine with me, and you can get a sense of whether there is conflict, or they just think their jobs are so uniquely different that it may make sense to, you know, they may have a different view, and like, I can't imagine having them all within one office, just as I can't, you know, imagine, or I don't have any experience in the separate offices.
Member Morocco?
Okay, so I want to move this discussion forward, and I had some questions for Mr. Pinsler, which I think Mr. Barris may be able to answer. I'm looking at the red line version that you put together, and the last two paragraphs are struck. And
Yes.
if it's an appointed city attorney and they, I don't know, appoint a firm or whatever, you're taking, my understanding is sometimes the person that we anticipate to be the city attorney wants other people in the firm to cover stuff. And when you cut out the assistant city attorney's ability, are you really cutting into that ability of the partner at the firm saying, well, this is a small item thing, let's have so-and-so deal with it? So I don't know what the practice is, but I think.
I was gonna, I was gonna disagree with that strikeout,
Okay.
because you're essentially handicapping the person from being able to, you know, have a team
Okay.
to do the work. And
That's
so,
fine.
yeah.
And then the other one was on the last paragraph. I don't know why it was in there specifically, but I don't know why you need to pull that out completely. It doesn't flow with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you need to keep that catch-all
Okay.
provision. So I disagree with both of the last
That's fine with
strikeouts.
me.
Okay. Committee member, there's, I guess, Oziak?
But I don't have any,
Okay.
thanks.
Can I just, are you looking at a red line version?
Yeah, the red line version.
Yeah, right here, it's,
Title CA for CRC track.
right,
Track. There are two of them. One is without the tracks.
That's it right
Read
there.
it without all these red lines. But
all the way to the bottom, that's what they're
the
talking
last
about.
two,
Next page.
I would have frankly thought that that was part of the contract with whatever firm or city that you would create. So that whether it needed to be in the charter or not is less of importance than it being in the contract with the city, with the firm that you would use. It doesn't matter if it's there or it's not. It seems somewhat boilerplate to me, but I would have thought that would be in the contract.
I'm not commenting on this, so I'm just, so just so I know, which ones are which two strikeouts?
Right under G, where
All the way
it's,
down.
Yeah, the
So
last
both-
two
both
strikeouts-
of
the
those,
last two
okay.
paragraphs of strikeouts.
I would
There you
assume,
go.
I would assume the same thing, but I'm not an attorney, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it should remain in the charter.
okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Doesn't mean you can't go into more detail on the contract, but.
and
That's
if
okay.
the contract change, if people in the firm leave and come and go, then you have to bring back them with a new contract otherwise, I would think. But I assume the practice is that you're allowed to pick and choose within your firm, and that's the discretion.
Member Oziak?
Are we finalizing anything? We're just going to table this, right?
Either way, frankly, I just wanted to get off my plate.
Well,
I want to get it done.
I think we finalized this.
It was
one.
not a
I think we're finalizing that we're going to send it to the
Colantuno.
outside
Okay, yeah.
attorney.
Right.
Well,
And then
okay.
you can vote at the end with whether you send both, whether you send one, whether you know, whatever.
This is,
Under 11.2, we're going to change the years for
oh, from 5 to 10?
practice, yeah, from 5 to 10?
Well, I was only
I
suggesting.
know you were on, but
I was only suggesting if in the Long Beach model that you do that, because you may not want to do that if it's a firm.
Well, Long Beach is 5.
Yeah, so I'm just, the only reason when I read the last charter review committee, they looked at changing it and they specifically said, we're going to leave it because it's the same as required for a judge. And with court consolidation, they eliminated the municipal court and all judges need to be practicing attorneys for 10 years. I don't know that it needs to be in this one. I would suggest you consider it if they're both elected so that you're guaranteed that.
There were some cities that had 3 years. And part of that was the smaller the city, it seemed the less they were asking for, because it's probably hard to find people to do it. So,
especially in the middle of the desert.
yeah, so there were a number of cities with 3 years.
Okay, so I don't see the tie into the judge. You can be admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court with 5 years experience. And I think if you're qualified to appear before the U.S. Supreme Court, you should be qualified to be a
Not
city attorney.
arguing.
So I'm
I
fine
just-
with the 5 years.
It was just something that they mentioned in the last report, which the reason for not changing it was no longer exists. So.
Okay.
Plus, as you mentioned before, the longer you make it, the smaller the pool.
That is true.
So this is finalized for now, right?
With the exception of
Actually,
to
this strikeout.
remove the strikeout from the last 2 paragraphs, which is fine with me.
And then we're going to look at the Long Beach model at the next meeting. How do we agenda?
Can we do that at the next meeting?
I'm sorry.
Long Beach?
Aren't you
Long Beach
missing
model,
that?
Let me, I think I will, in fact, I think be here now on the 25th. Let me, I'll have the Long Beach, the org chart and the, charter sections for you all. It'll depend on their schedule, whether I can get one or both of them. It may be best to have them on separate nights so they don't feel constrained to disagree with their counterpart. So let me.
Hence the problem.
We do have a
Hence,
schedule
maybe,
on the back of the-
hey, it may not be a problem. They are.
May or may not.
They're really different jobs. I mean, I can think of issues where if they became big, there would be an issue, but they're very different.
It's all good until it's not.
That comes with everything.
Yeah.
It's
As
worth
with
exploring. It's worth
Do you have time next agenda? We have the review of section 19.5 and also the school board. And also article, let's discuss the treasury next meeting as well. Is there time for the attorney for that meeting? Yep, okay. Okay. So.
I personally don't want to be here for 5 years. And so I agree with you. We should do our work and just move it on.
Moving on.
Going back to the issue you raised about the consultant,
Did you guys take a pill when I wasn't here last month? This has not been the attitude. This has not been the attitude in the past.
You missed a little bit, yeah.
You guys must have had some pills.
just, I don't want to lose the thread on the issue you raised about the consultant and whether you wanted to have a discussion or have.
Well, that was up to the committee, whether you want the consultant to come to the next meeting and we can give our input to the consultant. So when he analyzes all the materials, he at least gets the sense of this group, or do we want to just send it to him, let him analyze it, and then come back to us? And that's.
Any thoughts?
My takeaway from
What's
this.
your contract with him?
It can be either one. I think if it were me doing his job, I think it would be good to do the job and then return it to you for input and say, no, what we were thinking was this, or why did you put this? We hadn't thought that through, and that might be more productive. So,
Yeah, he has access to the records.
yeah.
So.
Okay, so now what happens next? The move from this item.
We need a
So,
public
are we-
comment.
are we-
Public comment. Are we any more
Are we going
comments?
to make a motion or
No motion.
is it just staying as?
think we've given
It'd be
direction.
good to make a motion to direct me to send
Yeah, I will make that motion.
the items in CA or CR3, the red, the red folder and the other one,
It says
to
track
Colin
it
Tuno, and then have him return.
without the strikeout of the last two paragraphs.
Correct.
So that's the motion.
Is
I'll
there a,
second that.
okay.
Public comment?
No public, none, for the record.
Any comments? Or it's the same question, right? Just
Yeah,
making
no
sure.
comments.
Got it, just making sure. All right,
No problem.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Great.
Okay, so it passes. So motion passes to
Put that to bed.
to move, what's the correct term? What's the correct term to say? Motion passes with the motion to move forward, or with the motion to add the,
Motion to move to the next
Consultants.
meeting, right? Continue it to the next meeting.
motion to continue was so approved. Okay, now we're I think we're item J now, J2. Discussion for possible action regarding Article 6, Section 6.5, vacancy declared by the council. Let's see. And what are we?
I think that's the one with the residency and.
Yeah,
the-
I would suggest it be more broadly defined in the future, because you need to be able to talk about more than let me look at it.
I think it's residency, and I think it's.
Yes.
It was the.
Moral
moral
turpitude,
turpitude.
and you'd already decided moral turpitude. But I think it's not just,
I've got a different issue.
Yeah, I think it got moved to June, right? I didn't realize that we were,
Well, I
that's
think
the
it is,
moral
because we were
I think it was-
discussing when we got
was
together
moved to
about
June.
it, yeah.
But if I could raise another issue, and that's the absent from 4 meetings. Now that this was written during a time when people physically had to be here. And the ability to be remote could be that this person is never here, other than they may have a residence, but they're never physically here. Is that a legitimate city council position?
Well, an absence is an absence. I mean.
No, if they are.
I
if
know,
they are-
that's what I'm saying.
there's a limit.
Even if you do it by
on
remote
teleconference.
and you're not there, you're absent.
No, you're not. Not under the new the rules that we have now.
Yeah, but under the rules, the Brown Act rules,
You're
now,
talking
they're
about-
still
you're
limited.
talking about
They cannot be
presumed.
indefinite. They can only do like 2.
but those can always be changed, and this is, the charter is, so I get the question, like, what else do you want to put in place? So for example, in the clerk and treasurer and city attorney, you can't be absent from the state for more than 30 days without the approval of the city council. So is that the sort of thing that you're putting in?
There's that, but also as a city council member, if you could spend your entire 4 years being a remote member of the council, is that proper service? You may have a residence, but you're never there. So is that legitimate? I don't think the state law has, it wouldn't surprise me, let's just say, state law doesn't deal with technology particularly well anyway. But there may very well be a situation where a person literally doesn't have to be here.
Well, but
Can attend the meeting.
Yeah, but the 30 days would like, are you thinking of some other,
The council members, not.
but I'm saying, okay, I didn't express that. Are you saying amend this to have the same provision be, so the council is don't miss four meetings. The other 3 can't be out of the state for 30 days. Do you want to have the council be don't miss meetings and don't be out of the state for 30 days? However, state law changes what the limits on, virtual participation. Are you, I'm not certain if if your fellow committee members agree there's a problem. Is that the type of fix you're looking for or something else?
all I'm saying is that this was written during a time when there was no other way to be a member of the council than to be here. Now it's possible to be a member of the council and not be here. That's what the law says now, as I understand it. Now, if you set it for 30 days, does that mean that if you're living in, if you're in Incline Village and you step across the border and you go back, then you're in California?
Well, it'd be Redondo for 30 days, so you'd have to drive from
Right, so
there
you
to
fly-
Redondo. But I'm not
You fly in,
suggesting,
you fly out.
I'm not suggesting anything, like what are you thinking for eliminating that problem is my
The
question.
issue I'm raising here is we can't be exclusive in dealing with this. Somebody else has got to be dealing with this issue. So is there any guidance that anyone is providing as to dealing with this new paradigm of attendance?
Not in their charters. I mean, you saw
Not in their
this.
charters, but,
Right.
but someone's thinking about this somewhere. I would think.
Someone. Member Morocco?
So I actually came to the last council meeting because the meeting before, I saw 2 members of council on Zoom, and it just seemed this side of the room was stacked, nobody was sitting over there. And I think I was going to suggest that they at least they cannot be remote it can't be remote 2 consecutive meetings. If you want to do it once because there's a problem, great. But 2 consecutive meetings is kind of, you're not doing your constituents any favor by not being able to have an proper exchange with people in the public. So I agree with you, there's a problem. Unfortunately, I think it's really something that's newly developed, and the council is really the people who set their own rules with regards to how they do it. I don't think it's good form to have somebody and this is for the attorneys, who have trials all over the place and then do everything remotely. So
It's harder to find out, like, the time. So 2 weeks, every 2 meetings, 3 meetings, 4 meetings.
well, that's why I said you can't do it 2 weeks in a row. So
That could be like a month. That's like a month though, right? So couldn't it be out? I guess timings would be.
I frankly wouldn't move it any less than four meetings. But all I'm thinking about is the possibility, and how do we get around that new paradigm that this charter hasn't thought of because it wasn't a legitimate thing to think of at that particular time. Now we have this possibility of being able to be remote all the time.
Right.
You could literally for 4 years be remote and you were considered present. And I don't think that, I'm not sure that that's what.
That's not what the Brown Act says. The Brown Act says you're limited to 2 times.
Of being-
There's a
of
limitation
being absent.
teleconferencing. No, of teleconferencing. So there is a limit.
per month or per year?
No, per year. It's twice per year.
I think.
Didn't they make an exception for Zoom?
I think it's an exception now.
Yeah,
for state
for
law.
Zoom.
But there's a limit. There's a limit to a member teleconferencing. It has to be an emergency, or you have to have just cause, and there's limitations to it. We're not in the COVID era anymore. There are limitations to teleconferencing, and you have to have a physical quorum, like you have to have a majority quorum in person before. So you would not be able to, like, everybody's out, everybody's doing it.
I think it's
Like, you
a bit-
need to have a physical presence.
Can you bring some of those rules to us?
Yeah, I didn't know it was a rule. We can look at ourselves.
Yeah,
as to-
that's just the current Brown Act rules. So, yeah, there's a limit for sure. It's,
I'm just wondering if Mr.
I want to say
Kinsler-
it's AB
And that's
361.
for the Brown Act, right?
This is
For the
about,
Brown
So
Act.
you could tie this all to whatever changes are ever made in the Brown Act. We could be subject to those rules.
Which we are
Yeah.
subject to the Brown Act. You cannot, under the Brown Act, you cannot teleconference every meeting. There are limits.
Is anybody monitoring that, Eleanor?
I mean, you know that.
Well, actually.
It's AB 361.
Yeah, well, we have a rule of conduct that the city council approved. I was trying to look for it because I don't see the current one. and they had brought up the teleconferencing. So there's certain, like if you're,
Oh, yeah. 259. Yeah. Yeah.
have a medical issue, they have to, provide, whoever's the first one, there's only, per charter, 3 people have to be here.
Right.
For a quorum. But they have to physically be here.
Physical.
And then the other 2 can provide, they have to give the information to us before we do the agenda, and it has to be on the agenda. And then also, they have to post it wherever they're at. So that if the public happens to be where they're at, they can actually be part of the meeting. I know, I've
heard that level. You said level before.
I like that.
Try that out.
That's
It's
the
not-
traditional
That's
Brown
traditional.
Act.
That's what we've
You
created.
adopted
We
that.
adopted that on our rules of conduct, but I was just trying to look to see if there was a certain amount of meetings that they can do.
In your rules as
But
opposed
I can't find it.
what's
for some
the-
reason.
2449.
2449,
Yeah, it's
AB
2449.
2449.
So which, Brown Act,
Twice a year.
twice a year? That actually
Or like
supersede
20%. Like they have certain rules about consecutiveness, so
AB or SB?
AB.
It's AB 2449.
And is that a calendar year or a fiscal year, or how do they?
It's calendar year.
Yeah, that-
Well, I'll look it up later.
But do you track that when they're doing it by remotely? At least tell them that they've now hit their limit on it?
No, there's, on the rule of conduct, there is a limit in there, and that's what I was trying to find. But I think it's more than 2.
Well, if it's inconsistent with the Brown Act,
the Brown Act is the one that supersedes that, right? I'm assuming.
Right.
it's the state
as far as I know.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, I can't find it. There's a process that we have. So that way, first come, first serve, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's limited to 2 virtual attendances based on just cause per
Just
calendar
cause
year.
or emergency. And then there's like a total.
Well, since we're meeting to discuss the residency and it's the section, maybe we should get a copy of whatever Eleanor's consulting and compare it, and then come back to this group with a recommendation.
Sounds reasonable, yeah? Sounds reasonable. I mean, that's. makes sense.
I'm looking at the other half of the subcommittee to see if she's in agreement with that.
I'm nodding, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that it's related. It's a related issue, so.
Is that okay, Mr. Pincer?
Okay, it's fine. Just-
I'll bring the rules.
But keep in mind, virtual attendance is not an absence, so that number
It's not an
4
absence.
is related to absence.
Right,
Physical
it's not an
Yeah,
absence.
but you only have 2 virtual calls per calendar year based on the Brown Act.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this topic? We're gonna,
So we
That was-
can,
that was my
I move to
What-
table it to the next meeting then.
Okay.
is there a second?
Second that, to table it, yes.
Electronic attendance.
Oh, I know, I just didn't know what you'd resolved. But the important thing is, it's the charter, and, the rules on virtual attendance have changed a lot in the past few years, and you have one that's only in effect through the end of this year, and then and that will likely change in the future, and the charter needs to be longer standing. So that's what I was saying, it really doesn't matter so much what the state rules are. It's what do we want in the charter? No matter what happens in the state, we think this would be bad. This would remove the individual from the community. And that's what, if anything, you would be proposing in any charter amendment dealing with that.
Yeah, AB 2449 is a 1-year bill.
Yeah,
It just
it
covers 1 year.
expires.
So
Yeah, but
it
again.
could change.
Yeah, yeah. So and we have to assume for a charter, which hopefully will last longer than 1 year or 2 years, you want to decide what you want to recommend to the voters, and if anything, and have them pass.
That's why when we discuss it, we'll bring it back to you and we can discuss it. If we send it up to the council, they can discuss it and consistent with their rules of conduct, so.
Yeah, so the rules of conduct says, it finally came up, limits to 9 meetings per year per council member, subject to council approval thereafter.
But that was last drafted before the changes in law.
Right.
That was
So-
during the COVID.
And we still, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I still think we have a city-issued emergency regarding COVID. The state ended theirs at the end of February. The county ended theirs at the end of March. But I don't recall seeing that the city council revoked the state, the local state of emergency.
And you didn't link it to the county, or?
I just don't, I didn't do anything, but
I mean, look at the language, because
yeah,
some of them are linked to the county.
I don't recall. And so I'm just saying, I don't know. Certainly I will,
Revisited.
yes.
I think it was associated that they had these meetings where they would renew the emergency powers, and I seem to recall that.
There were different, there were some that you have to do every 30 days. And so we're keeping our dining deck program in Riviera Village can only exist while there's the state of emergency is approved by the Coastal Commission. There's certain emergencies that have to be done for the, what is it, on the improvement on the work the county is doing on the one of the pathways down to the beach, yeah. And so there are various renewals. I just don't recall offhand, because I'm not involved in that process, if we ever, if the city ever revoked the general statewide, because it has, I don't remember it happened, but the point, yeah, but if the language were trigger, it was tied to the state or county, then it would have ended. But something tells me they wanted to preserve more of their control over it, so it may not be tied to that.
I have a feeling there's a memo coming.
Oh, yeah. Conversation with the city manager when he's back in the state, so.
I have a question about vacancies and absences, accommodation for like illnesses and things of that nature. Is that addressed anywhere in the charter, or?
So it is for differently. I don't recall if it is by the.
You have personal experience.
I do. So if in the section on that will need to be amended for your current bill, if you're unable, so I had a stroke and couldn't speak in complete sentences, and the council had to grant me up to 6 months. And then if I couldn't return within 6 months, then I would have had to resign. So they granted the 6 months. With the mayor, it's different because the charter created the mayor pro tem position, and there's not a requirement that the mayor attend meetings, because the mayor can do much of his job, at home. He can veto resolutions, he can veto ordinances, he can appoint members to the committee. So there's no hurry. So he was, as he battles his cancer, he was on, whatever his ability, what would help his recuperation. He wasn't tied to the 6 months that I was tied to. And the council appears to be just, if the council approves it, which could be problematic, because what if a majority of the council isn't in favor or is political opponents of that council person? So there are all sorts of different, but it makes sense because the city's in real trouble if the clerk or the attorney or treasurer can't do their job that needs to be done on a day-to-day basis for longer than 6 months. So it drives a nice balance between accommodating an emergency and preserving the right to the voters to have their full-time people or part-time in terms of the treasurer. With the mayor, it can go on long-term, and it specifically mentions in the mayor pro term, long-term disability, where the mayor pro tem can, it's not just if the mayor is on vacation. I don't recall offhand the city clerk has anything different than, the city council has anything different than has to be excused by his fellow council people. So if you think that should change in any of the above, then certainly you should explore that as a committee.
Okay. I have a motion that was seconded to move this to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Additional research? Public comment?
None.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we approved moving the agenda item J2, discussing section J5 to next meeting. Item J3, discussion of impossible action regarding how items get placed on the agendas.
Is this for us or for the city? I don't know.
I didn't put it on.
I just put on a long time, when you guys made that list, and.
Is this a one-step, two-step issue?
So
No, I think it's council, but Ralph, emailed me and said, we're supposed to put these on, so
So it could be either. So one step, two step, which it makes no sense. Now, you're so collegial, one step works. The one step, two step came about from a point in time where, and this may be the other topic, where they were having battles on the council on what to put on the agenda.
What a shock.
And they were having full-on discussions about whether to put it on that involved the merits of whatever they were proposing. And that is not within the exception of the Brown Act, that you can have a real brief discussion. I want to agendize X, and if a majority of the council votes, then X goes on the agenda unless vetoed by the mayor. But this was turning into a full-on discussion. And the idea behind a two-step is that staff isn't devoting a lot of energy doing a full report for something that doesn't have a majority even willing to discuss it. You're very collegial. Now that we're through the management stuff, there's not a lot of staff time, and so that works. I don't know if the idea was you wanted to discuss putting in the charter, how things get agendized for a council. You could do it where when we discussed all the options, you can have any one person can put stuff on the agenda. Well, the problem with that is staff is going to spend a lot of time in something that never is receive and file. And so it's like, is that the best use of time? So if that we were discussing, we're not sure exactly what this issue is. So you may want to just punt it till next month when Ralph is back and see if.
My concern has always been that if you're voting to not do something, you are taking a vote, which is violative of the Brown Act.
But the court, in the case that I've showed you on multiple occasions,
I know.
Ruled different. And I'm not saying that the court was right, but they're the court, so we have to follow them.
I understand.
And so it's clear it has to be a brief discussion. Do you want to talk about it or not? Not, hey, I think this is a great idea. We should talk about it because A through Z, and then someone has a counter rebuttal. No, A through Z, and they're talking about the merits now as of the item, as opposed to whether we should just have a conversation. And that's where the two-step came from, because then it's like, all right, we'll agendize it so you can have that debate before staff gets involved. You don't need a two-step as a group because you're very collegial and it's like, okay, fine, we'll talk about it. And then the person discuss it and decide to go further or not.
Committeemember Morocco?
Okay, so we don't have the same time pressure we did with the other stuff. So I think the two-step seems to work. I was curious about the process here. So my experience with my commission is that the staff person is the person who ultimately decides what the agenda, even though the administrative procedures say it's in consultation with the chair. But how is it getting on the agendas here? Are you just taking whatever we say, and are you the one who's doing it? Is the city manager doing it? It's a combination?
It's you and the council. The council has put some of the stuff on in two directions of staff, I think in November and in January, and that's where stuff appeared. And whatever you put on and whatever comes from future agenda. Initially, it was the city manager giving a list of things that they wanted, all the administrative stuff, and then the other things the council did. And I think The first resolution was a concrete list. This is what you have to decide and give us monthly reports.
Right.
And then it became when you wanted to, so I told you after the first meeting, okay, you want to meet more than once, there's a time crunch, I'll take it to the council. Someone spoke to the council before then, and so the next meeting, they said, well, we want the whole resolution looked at, and then they gave you till November, talk about anything you want, including these specific topics, and give us one report in November. And ever since then, it's just been things that have come directly from the council or things directly from you. As far as I'm aware, there's no issues that have been on there other than that have come from staff.
Yeah, actually, what I think I'll do is next time is actually take the verbiage from your minutes. So that way you guys will be refreshed of what, because all the stuff we put on is related to conversations you've had from prior meetings. Because I know there's sometimes I put something on and you're like, this is done. And I'm like, our minutes didn't state
Right,
that.
and so just,
So-
yeah, logistically, they prepare it and then they send it for me for review. And I would say, like, for example, one we had to display, I thought that was done. Well, they put it in the minutes. Okay, we'll put it on. And then you said, no, that one's
Right.
done. And when I saw, when I saw this item, okay, what is, I'm not certain what it's about, but she indicated. So it may be best to just,
Yeah, I thought it was about the council, because.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so we sent it to the chair and he said, what about these two? And so I'm like, okay, so we'll put those in. So that's, I think what I'll do next time, based on the conversation we had at the beginning of what you guys wanted to put on, we'll do that.
Can you
put the
maybe
minutes.
punt this until June so that you can discuss under future agenda topics whether you want to do this? And then in June, you're going to have the Long Beach model, May, Long Beach model, feedback from Colin Tuno, and
school
the
board.
clerks and the school board. So it's going to be a weighty agenda anyway, so it may make sense to move it to June.
Is there a motion for that?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Public comment?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
And just for scheduling, there's a chance that I may miss the July meeting. So if you can avoid putting anything that you need me for, that'd be helpful.
okay. Item J3, discussion, we approve moving discussion and possible action regarding how to get items placed on agendas.
That's what we just talked
I
about.
know, we moved it to, we voted unanimously to move it to the next meeting.
June, I thought.
June,
June.
so future agenda.
Okay, J4, future agenda item topics.
I have a question on this one also. It's confusing to me. I have a topic I want to bring up. Am I going to bring it up in this section over here? Or am I going to save it for member items and referral to staff?
Now that you've agendized it, you can it's essentially, you can put it on.
Okay, then I have a proposal. And
No, it can't be a full-on proposal.
No, but it's
we
I want to explain it in a
yes.
way that people understand it so
That's
that we can
totally
vote
fine.
to discuss it. So, and I haven't talked it over with the city manager, and I really want to be able to explore that with him. And I also don't know what the practice is in the city already, but I think it would be beneficial to put in the charter, because I think that the mayor and council can interfere with staffing. And I think you're telling me if my assumptions are correct by nodding your head. But it would be nice to have periodic departmental management audits, part of the discussion, so that we can have more transparency, certain accountability. And so I would like to agendize having a discussion about having periodic departmental management audits done on an irregular basis.
I'm all in favor of the discussion, but I'm not really sure that that's something that we can put in the charter.
Well,
City council has one employee,
right.
and he employs everybody else underneath him. So how does that get into the charter then?
Because the council has no ability to interfere with the employment, but the public has a right to know what's going on within
That's a
all the
different subject.
departments.
That's
So
a,
that's the part I'm trying to get into the charter. It's like, let's have something so the public and that you don't have the tension between the council and the city manager. It's basically,
I'm going to let Bob speak here, but I think this is getting too far down in the weeds.
The cities that do this have a city controller.
right,
Basically, city control, that's what city controllers do, is that they're primarily audit.
right. San Diego is a good example.
Yeah. So the city council can create a city controller position if they wish. It can be created in the charter and be given to the council to do. But if you put it in the charter, then there may not be a long-term need for it.
Well, I just want to bring it up for discussion. I want to talk to the city manager specifically to see what his views on. And see if
Do you want to?
No,
Yeah, right. So how about this? Do you want to have a discussion to see if it's worth putting a city controller position into the charter? Because that would do
That's what
the
it-
function
what it
that
is.
you're talking about without any of the other consequences. And we can look at alternatives.
Without getting into the discussion, because
That's all I was trying to end by
But
proposing.
when we discuss the city controller and putting it in the charter, okay? If we did that, right? Would we then be electing or?
We can talk about
Well,
that.
That's my point. This is my point. This is a big can of worms, my friend.
Yes, and I've actually researched some
Okay,
of it,
okay.
and I go with the League of California Cities on this one. There's different models out there.
I'm waiting.
So I think everyone.
Long Beach has their own model again. San Diego is called the city auditor. There are some other cities,
City controller.
and there's even an organization that's called IPAs, which is Innovation, Performance Management, and Audit.
So you want to have again, you want to speak about this topic in the future meeting.
Maybe
Yeah, I want to add that to the discussion, but I want to, before we fully vent it, I want to talk to the city manager, because again, there may be something already in place.
So we can agendize it and you can present at it. You know, so the idea, so the motion would be appropriate is to agendize in June, the consideration of a city controller or auditor in the charter.
Right.
Right, okay. I would like to just have periodic department management audit
That-
without necessarily a title next to it, so that we can have a little bit more flexibility on the discussion as far as.
Then make your motion.
Transparency.
Yeah. That we explore discussion about having periodic department management audits done in the city of Redondo Beach.
On what date?
What?
On what date? So that the clerk knows to
The
put it
agenda.
on.
Which agenda?
It looks like May's got the more flexibility. June's pretty packed. So
No,
No,
I will not-
May's packed. I don't know that June has a lot.
I'm looking at the one that we have.
June has moral turpitude and
Oh.
also,
city clerk.
So May looks like it is. I think at that point, I can come back to you all and say, okay, I've talked to the city manager. Yes, let's pursue a discussion and we can put it on a different day, or no, after talking to the city manager, it's not worth pursuing, and you guys can decide if you want to pursue it or not at that point. So May would be, and I'm suggesting putting on the May agenda.
You make the motions.
I just did.
Does anyone have a second?
I'll second it because I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Public comment?
no public comments.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we approve to add the periodic audit of city employees.
No, department management audit.
Department management audit.
It's management, not necessarily the employees, so,
Department management audit in the June meeting.
thank you.
Anything else? Okay. So item K, member items and referrals to staff.
No.
I have one, and it's more of a report back. I think at the council meeting, they gave us a deadline for the next report. I want to say it's October, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't remember that. No.
Yeah, they did.
How was that the meeting?
They did, but the resolution, it just happened last Tuesday, and the resolution isn't written yet, and it was kind of a wandering motion. So we don't have the minutes yet, the draft minutes yet. And
Nicely put.
and I want to have those before I watch the meeting and draft the resolution. So I'm thinking, I thought it was maybe November again, but maybe not.
Okay, I just wanted the group to know that there is another
Recommend-
Yeah,
report
we'll
deadline.
bring on, it will be the resolution. You know, once it's completed, that will be definitely by your,
Recall that discussion. I didn't think they came to a conclusion.
Member Pincer?
Just that, when I handed in the document on the city attorney, I also sent in a document on, with a draft line on, a track line on the city clerk. So it's already prepared for
Right.
June's meeting, so just.
okay, and we're going to have the discussion for June's.
Yeah,
meeting.
so that's
Okay.
in place and everything was fine.
Oh, and there's one other thing on it. This also pertains, it's more informational. So they're discussing at the May 2nd meeting, I believe, whether Norma becomes the permanent person from District 5 and there's a swap between Ms. Wonderly and you, and whether the city council member is going to put in somebody completely new as the alternate. I think also for Eugene's spot, they're doing the same thing at the May 2nd meeting. Is that?
I believe I saw an item about that on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
A draft agenda. The agenda won't be finalized till tomorrow.
Okay, so just
That's
be
my
aware that's out
understanding
there.
That's not a discussion one, anyway.
What?
That's not a discussion one. It's a city council meeting.
Yeah, it was, and they were talking about removing
Correct.
Ms. Wonderly for failure to attend these meetings, so it was just kind of unusual. So I wanted you guys to know.
Okay.
All right. Item L adjournment.
To adjourn.
Second.
The public comment for this?
Anything you vote on.
Public comment?
You can adjourn.
You have to wake them up.
Public comment on this one?
Yes.
Anybody who stops us is not going to get it.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned at 8:52 PM,
Great.
April 27th.
Thank you.